Hola, aquí estoy con Gianluca Mauro, un gran orador sobre inteligencia artificial y tecnología. Él es de Roma, Italia, trabajó en Silicon Valley, es la sede de muchas empresas tecnológicas emergentes y globales como Apple, Facebook y Google. It is a pleasure for me having you here. How are you, Gianluca?
I'm doing quite okay, even though I just tested positive for COVID, but luckily I don't have any symptoms, so it's fine.
I'm glad you don't have symptoms, At some point it will reach us all, but it's just to keep taking care of ourselves. But now, do you feel normal?
I'm feeling great. I had just a little bit of sore throat yesterday, but today it's totally fine. I think thanks to I got 3 vaccination shots, I think that helped a lot.
Glad that you are okay now. Well, just moving on, your history is extremely interesting. You are an energy engineer, and that was how you understood a certain algorithm that you found on the internet. You modified it and then you posted what you did to it, and that's the way that you got your job, your first job at Silicon Valley. Am I right?
Sure. Yeah, so I have a background in energy engineering, which means that I studied how to build wind turbines, solar panels, all that kind of stuff. But then I got a scholarship to go and live in Silicon Valley for a few months, and that completely changed my life. That was in 2015 when AI was really exploding. This was when companies like Google and Facebook started pushing the first algorithms that seemed to actually work and bring us, the kind of results that we wanted to get from AI. And one of the things that I found out there was some companies were using AI for the kind of stuff that I was interested in at the time, which was energy saving. There were a lot of different examples, and one of them was a company in Silicon Valley that was using AI to basically analyze the energy consumption of households and find patterns within these energy consumptions to help these people save energy and help them manage the load of their energy consumption. So when I came back to Italy from Silicon Valley, I thought, well, it would be nice if I could find a way to try to replicate what they did using open source data and open source technology. Because basically, I wanted to have some experience, but I didn't have a job, So I needed to find a way to do something without having a company paying me. And so I built this little project and I published the results that I got on a blog post. And it was amazing because this blog post became viral overnight and a lot of people reached out to me. And one of these people offered me a job. This was my first job as a data scientist, and it was for a company in Silicon Valley. So I think there's a lot of stuff to learn from this. Personally, one is that I was able to build this thanks to the internet, thanks to all the knowledge that I could find on the internet. I have a master's degree in energy engineering, but everything that I know about AI, I learned it either online or from other people and mentors that I had, or just by doing experience. But the first start was the internet, which, if you think about it, it's so empowering, it's so democratic. You can have access to this knowledge from everywhere in the world, right?
It is amazing and kind of crazy the way that you got a job. And I have to remark, based on your history, the importance in learning the skill of being autodidactic. And in my experience, being a physics student, in whatever we do, just to say in our job, in our career or degree, it is massively important to learn by yourselves, not just to be conform of what you learn in school. And also it is important to use social media and internet in a productive way. Learn new abilities instead of spending time consuming trash content. And the way that you got that job is an example of using the knowledge and information that we get in a right way. And well, I want to ask you, how was this first interaction in this job as an expert of AI?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think something interesting is when I got this job for this company, I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome, because I thought, hey, I don't have a lot of experience in AI, and this is a Silicon Valley company, so it's the top of the pops, And so I told them, hey guys, I am not that experienced. I want to be honest with you. And what Alex, the head of data science of this company, told me was, hey, don't worry about it. I am going to help you with the technical knowledge that you miss. What I'm interested in is the ideas and the creativity that you can have. And that experience helped me understand that AI, it's a tool. It's like a hammer or a screwdriver. If you think about it, if you have a great idea for, let's say, a new piece of furniture, okay, a new table, a new chair or something, your idea of the design is more important than how to smash the hammer to put the nails. And so in that case, what Alex wanted was my idea for the projects that we could build together, and he provided his technical experience on how to use the hammer, which meant how to develop more sophisticated algorithms. And that I think was really good, and that's exactly what I am preaching now when I do work in consulting or coaching AI teams at large organizations.
Creativity is a really important tool that we think it makes us different. Like you said, it's more important the design behind than the way we smash the hammer. And talking about creativity, as human beings, we have the ability to create something out of nothing. We can imagine new scenarios, theories, inventions. You know, our creativity is something extremely important. So I want to ask you, can at some point artificial intelligence simulate our creativity?
It's interesting. To me, AI has opened a lot of questions about what creativity really means. So it is important to say this. AI today, it's mostly built using a series of technologies, a set of techniques really called machine learning, which means that computers are able to learn from data. Okay? So there are some algorithms that seem to be creative. There's an algorithm by a company called OpenAI that was founded by Elon Musk and a bunch of other people that was able to create new images, new art. And people thought, wow, this is creative. Another algorithm was able to write blog posts, and people were like, wow, these blog posts are really creative. It was able to write poetry, to write all these sort of things. But then if you know how AI works, if you know what's happening behind the scenes, all that these algorithms are doing is learning from data that is produced by humans. So in a certain way, they're just replicating, they're just finding patterns within data and try to push that out. I like to call these algorithms parrots on steroids, because they do nothing more than repeating what they've seen, but maybe, put together in a little bit of a different way. And if we call that creativity, then in my mind, it means that creativity is not really creating something out of nothing, but rather it's taking all our inputs, all our inspiration from the art that we've seen, the conversations we had with people, and combine it in our brains. And I think that's really the conversation that we need to have. What does it mean really to be creative? And there's just one last thing that I want to say. I think a new trend that I'm seeing and that I'm super fascinated about is when artists are using AI to get inspiration. There's an example of a girl in Sweden that I was one of my students at a course. She's an artist. She's an amazing painter. And what she's doing is that she's using AI to generate images of paintings. And then she's looking at these images and she's getting inspiration for a new painting. And so she's co-creating with artificial intelligence. In the end of the day, I always think that AI is a tool. It's a tool. It's a hammer. It's a paintbrush. You can come up with a paintbrush that paints by itself, but in the end of the day, the most important thing is we have a tool. How can we use it to express the kind of feelings that we want to give, the message that we want to give? That's really the most important thing and what excites me the most.
Sometimes we tend to believe that our creativity is this special or magical ability that we have, but it's nothing but the product of what we have learned, and based on that we can improve that knowledge in something else. And it is interesting the way that AI can also participate helping artists improving their art. And now AI is enough advanced to know as a partner what we like or not, creating art and another stuff. But considering this, at what point AI could become dangerous for us? I mean, the danger that comes with a super intelligent AI.
That's a really difficult question. But I think, okay, let's talk about two different things. One is what you just said. So the kind of danger of a super intelligent AI. There's a lot of people that talked about this. We could talk about this for ages. If anybody's interested in going deeper into this, there's a very interesting and important book called Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. So I think it depends on what it's. We need to take this into account. AI optimizes for what we ask it to optimize. It cannot come up with its own goal. We set a goal for this AI, and then the AI is gonna do anything that it takes to maximize for that goal. And there's a huge risk in this. An example is a friend of mine called Jim Gao, who worked for Google, and he built this algorithm that was supposed to optimize the energy consumption of Google's data centers. And the AI said, hey, I found a great way to fix this problem. Turn everything off. It's dangerous, you know? But imagine if you ask an AI, hey, I want you to solve climate change. And the AI says, cool, the biggest threat to climate change is humans. I'm gonna kill all of them. Yeah, sure, you fix the problem. You fix climate change because there are no humans polluting, but at what cost? So that's really hard to foresee, but I think this is a conversation for something that is very far-fetched in the future. Like these kind of applications, it's really hard to give a timeline for this sort of general AI because it's just so far away. But that doesn't mean that there are no threats today to AI. I want to give you a couple of examples of very simple AI applications that still can give a lot of damage. One is very simple. Amazon wanted to build an AI algorithm that will look at a resume, so an application from somebody that wanted to work for Amazon. It will either send it further into the application process or discard it and push it away. Cool. The algorithm learned from the data of Amazon's employees. And what the algorithm learned was that if you were a man, that was a good thing, you had to pass. If you were a woman, bad thing, you couldn't go on in the recruiting process. And of course, this algorithm learned it because Amazon has a problem in gender equality within the company. Amazon has much more male employees than female employees. And this is not just Amazon, it's a problem in the whole tech industry. There's a statistic in Europe that I think 17% of ICT, so information technology workers, are female, just 17%. For an algorithm that has an objective, hey, replicate this behavior, replicate this decision-making process, that's a strong signal. The algorithm says, hey, I found out that most of the people that pass this interview are males. That means that being male is a good thing. Nice. And that's awful. It can create a lot of damage if it goes underchecked. But that's why I think it's important to have some regulation. The European Union has already made huge steps towards regulation of AI, and I see that all the other countries are trying to follow on. But I wanna say just one thing. Every time that I tell people about this sexist AI algorithm, everybody always looks at me like shocked. It's shocking if you think about it. Yet, this is not different from what it's already happening. Managers at companies have been making sexist decisions for decades. So AI, it's a little bit of a paradox, but the fact that AI is basically, I call it a mirror of society. The fact that AI is learning these biases and spitting them on your face, it's making people turn on something in their brain and start thinking about these issues more. So even though AI is not solving these issues, AI, I think it's kind of waking people up to think more about these problems. And I will also, this is a little bit of a provocation that I have, but I think it's interesting to think about from a philosophical point of view. I think it's much harder to fix people's mindsets than algorithms. If I want to fix all the mindset of all the managers at Amazon, it's going to take me, probably I'm never going to be able to do it. But an algorithm is a bunch of numbers. I can, most of the times, open it up, tune a little bit of knobs, and try to fix it. So it's probably easier to fix a sexist AI algorithm than a sexist culture in a tech company, right?
I agree with that. It is important to fix our society because our technology is a reflection of us, and we must have regulations to control AI. It is hard to believe that this sexist algorithm existed just because took that behavior from people of Amazon, and it is scary to imagine what would happen if AI replicate the behavior of the dark side of our society. It could replicate the behavior of wars, supremacy, or discrimination. And another interesting question is, what do you think about the simulation? Do you think we can at some point reach that line where based on AI it could replicate our lives?
I think there's a lot about consciousness that still needs to be uncovered. I think consciousness is one of the great mysteries of human life. I think what I really like is that artificial intelligence is giving us a different way to think about our own consciousness. I think by studying what consciousness means into AI software, I think that's giving us different ways to look at our own consciousness. And there's a lot of different experiments about it. An example is they built a system where there were two AI agents that needed to get some apples from a tree. And these two AI agents were independent. So both of them had different AI algorithms learning the best way to pick apples. Okay? It was a simulation of two agents in an environment that had a conflicting goal. The conflicting goal was getting apples. Okay? So in theory, I could decide to kill you to get all the apples. That was an option. The two agents could shoot each other and that will freeze them, and they will have time to get the apples while the other one was frozen. This is a simulation. What they found out is that the more complex they made the AI, the more these agents started to be offensive against each other. So at the beginning, simple algorithms will cooperate. But the more sophisticated these algorithms became, the more they understood that they had another option to get these apples, which was shooting at each other and then get the apples. This is just a simulation, but if you think about it, it's copying, it's a little bit replicating what happened to our own consciousness. If you think about this, monkeys, animals in the real world, they have a simpler neural network in their brains than us. They rarely go to war with each other. Yes, I mean, if in cases where the resources are scarce, maybe they have to fight, but most of the times they basically mind their own business because fighting is dangerous, If I have fruit, I just eat the freaking fruit and don't mind fighting with my neighbor. But the more we became sophisticated, the more we started shooting each other for different reasons, okay? So I think this is super interesting to me because we are seeing a very human behavior being simulated in a way by these AI algorithms, and the only difference, the only thing that explains this aggressive behavior is the sophistication of the algorithms behind, which is a great proxy for the fact that our main course is the fact that our brain is so sophisticated, can do a lot of different things. So now, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a psychologist, I like to study these things, but I'm fascinated by how these AI experiments are helping me at least think better about human consciousness. And maybe AI is going to help us answer the questions that you asked, or a bunch of other questions as well, about what it means to be human, what it means to have a brain, what it means to think, what it means to be self-conscious. So I encourage people like philosophers, psychologists, people that come from disciplines outside of computer science to get closer to the world of AI, to study and research this field, because I think there's a lot that you can learn from this. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you can take and use in your work. There's a lot of thought experiments that you can try to replicate with an AI algorithm and see what happens. So it's a field, AI, it's a field that needs to go out of computer science and needs to get into other fields, philosophy, sociology, psychology. All these people need to get into AI because I think, again, it's going to be amazing for them as well.
Con esto terminamos esta charla. Muchas gracias por escucharnos, and thank you so much, Gianluca, for your time. I really appreciate it. See you soon.